We are the tribe from the north, we're brave and we're bold. Defeating our rivals never gets old. Making our way to the Big Sky Conference. Watch out, 'cause here comes the silver and gold. Whoa, whoa. This is Tubbs at the club for the Vandals of Idaho.
Welcome back, Tribe from the North, Brave and Bold, to the official, unofficial podcast of your Idaho Vandals and the Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brian Marceau, joined as always by co-host Dallas Hammer, holding it down Spokane. Dallas, how's it going?
It's going good, but nobody wants to hear from me today.
Correct. As the other member of our crew, holding it down in the background, our favorite loose cannon producer, Marten Heemstra from Moscow, one of our people from Moscow. Marten, how's it going?
Doing good. It's almost time. The students are almost leaving. It's getting quiet in Moscow, and I'm enjoying life in the slowing down Moscow.
Did you just pronounce it as Moscow?
Moscow.
Okay, thank God. Okay, we're gonna just jump into Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. The point of this episode, we've got a special guest, guys. Offensive coordinator and quarterback coach for the University of Idaho, Luke Schleusner, is joining us. Luke, first time on, how's it going?
It's going great. Appreciate the support and appreciate you guys having me on.
And with that, we'll get started. Listeners, we're gonna spend a lot of time going over spring game and maybe implications into the fall. But before we begin talking about Saturday's game, Coach Schleusner, got a question for you. I want to see if you can give listeners just a little background. Your name was one of the first names we heard as being connected with Coach Jason Eck when he was candidate Jason Eck coming over to Idaho. You guys at South Dakota State, you guys were, of course, in the midst of a playoff run. I was curious whether you'd be okay giving us a quick run through of what was the process of you going from South Dakota State to coming to University of Idaho.
Yeah, well, Jason and I are really close and, have worked together the last 6 years at South Dakota State. So, knew that he had some opportunities and some things going on. And it was always kind of interesting as a candidate because he couldn't always say what was going on, but he would say, hey, there may be an opportunity. And, if there's an opportunity, would you be interested and would you be involved? And I said, well, I can't promise you, but, love working with you. And, we just have to see there's a lot of logistics that go into that. So it was, and then it's such a stressful time too, because we're just getting ready for the national playoffs and, week to week having these big games and a lot of road games that we ended up playing this year. So a lot of preparation, a lot of stress, and then, having the coaching carousel thing go on at the same time and a lot of things happening. So
probably last background question before I throw it to Dallas to jump into spring football. How indirect did you guys have to be in for how long? This is the first time I've ever heard that described that way because you're the first offensive coordinator to come over that I've ever talked to. How long was that? And how much did you feel while going through that process like you were both in the dark but kind of clear about what was happening?
Yeah, it was a little bit crazy. And, you hear about different opportunities and you even sometimes I'd talk with my coworkers that weren't Jason and we'd wonder like, oh, will he have a shot at that? Or will this happen? And so there was a lot of what ifs going on at that time. And, I actually interviewed for a head coaching job around that same time. So, that I didn't end up getting. So there's so many kind of balls in the air, things happening. And, so it's kind of a crazy time. And like I said, the big thing is we're really trying to focus on what we needed to do to win a game and get back to that national championship. And, and then even when Jason got the job, then, I kind of knew what was going to happen, but obviously I can't say anything to the players or even my own boss at the time, really until after the game was played and, after things kind of shook out. So definitely a crazy time, but, it was good stress too, knowing that I had this great opportunity, or I could have stayed put and had a great situation.
Well, Coach Schleus, we're glad to have you here. So thank you for coming to Moscow. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. I guess I'll just kind of jump right into it. How's your first couple months on the job been? What do you feel? How do you like Moscow so far?
It's been great so far. It's been a lot of fun, and we feel the support when we're out in the communities. That's one thing that's fun. It's definitely Moscow is definitely a Vandal country, and feel it even throughout the state of Idaho. Going down and playing our spring game in Boise with the weather the way it was, I was like, nobody's going to be here. And man, I can't remember what the final number was. I think it was over 2,000 people for whatever it was, 50 degrees and raining, and pretty miserable day for a spring game. But so it was just great to see the support that we had, and really enjoying the community here. And it was kind of time for a change in my life. So wanted to kind of do something different. I'd lived in the Midwest my whole life. My wife had lived in the Midwest pretty much her whole life, besides a year she spent down in Florida. So we just decided it was good timing. Our son was a high school senior and is graduating here this May. So it was just everything kind of aligned perfectly, and was just excited for the opportunity and excited to keep working with Jason.
Love it. We're going to jump right into football questions. Coach, what did you think you needed to see in the last, you had 15 or so spring practices. What was the goal? What did you hope to see out of your guys to call the spring season a success?
First and foremost, we talked about it before the spring game. We can't afford to have anybody hurt. So that was a big goal of the spring, is just to stay healthy. I think that's one of the challenges we have right now, is just building our depth, building the roster. There's a couple times it got kind of hairy there during spring ball. We had to have a non-padded practice, and, we got down to 9 O-linemen. At one point we had 8. So, you're talking, you don't even, even through the last whole half of spring ball, we didn't even have a full second string offensive line. So I think our second to last scrimmage, we went like 57 plays, and Logan Harris took 57 reps. For an O-lineman to have to do that, and to not, usually in a game you'd have breaks. We didn't have any breaks. We went 1s, and then we went 2s, and he was out there. And then at some positions we had 3s, so we'd go 3s, and he was still out there. So, so that was a big part, is making sure that we stay healthy, and then just wanted to see the guys progress, learn the offense, learn the concepts. So I think, and then the other big part was just evaluating personnel. I started spring ball, I had 7 quarterbacks in my room. And by the end we had 4. And I think when we took over, we had 21 wide receivers on the roster. We gave 4 or 5 of those guys to the defense, and a couple of them found good homes, like Mujib and Kyron, that I think can be contributors on defense. But some of that stuff, we just had to kind of roll the ball out and see what we had and be able to evaluate our personnel.
This is my last question before I'll kick it over to Brian. I have a bunch of follow-ups on that stuff, but I think most of our listeners, including Brian and I, weren't able to get out to the spring game. It's a pretty hefty drive from Coeur d'Alene and Spokane to make it down to Boise. What did you see, just as generally, how did the spring game go? What did you see from your side of the ball? What did you think of everything that happened just last weekend?
Yeah, well, we've got some work to do, and we didn't execute the greatest on Saturday. I think the challenge throughout the spring was, especially for the scrimmage situations, offense, the defense has whatever 6-8 calls that they make the whole spring ball, and obviously they have to adjust to formations and personnel and all that. But offense, we've got a pretty thick playbook. I think once the guys understand the concepts, it'll be a lot easier. But when we didn't go live, or even when we went live, but we had it scripted, the offense played pretty well. But we could kind of coach our guys in between plays and, tell them, hey, we had it scripted, so we could say, hey, this next play, when you go in, remember to do this. And then you get to the scrimmage situations, and then obviously you can't do that. So, so I think between that and a little bit of nerves, we didn't execute the greatest on Saturday. But that'll come. And the other thing is, we were going to play everybody and give everybody an opportunity to play. So that's the other challenge. Offense, a lot of it is about rhythm as well. And when you're just rolling so many guys through and playing everybody, it's hard to get in a rhythm when there's 5 running backs and, you're splitting carries. It's hard when there's 4 quarterbacks and you're not getting a ton of reps. So, some of that stuff I think we'll be better with as time goes on. And, there's some pieces there. We just got to continue to improve. And, I think the good thing is I told the guys the whole time, we get 15 practices in the spring. We'll have all summer to prepare, and then we'll have 29 more practices before it's showtime. So do I wish we were a little farther along? Yes. But am I, greatly concerned with it? No, because we have a lot of time, and, I feel like we just have to keep taking it day by day and getting better.
So before we circle back to more offensive questions, the story from the people from listening to the broadcast, which I did, and from the people who saw the game and talked to us, they told us the story of the game, which you've already alluded to, was defensively, Idaho looked pretty good. You've also alluded to, hey, spring ball, we're rotating guys. It's not a normal game. Probably take some of this with a grain of salt. Defensively, what do you think fans should take away as maybe generalizable from the performance on the defensive side of the ball last Saturday?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stands out right now is they have really good depth in the defensive line. So that was really the difference maker Saturday, as well as when our second string offensive line was against the second string defensive line. That was a bad matchup for us. But they had some guys in, Devontae Keys and Kamari Bailey are 2 defensive ends that were running with the 2s that I think could be 1s a lot of places. And then we have to get better with our 2s. So that was a big mismatch for the offense. We were in 2-minute offense, and I even called a max protection slide pro play action with like 20 seconds left in the half, but we called drop back passes the first 2 downs and we got sacked immediately. So it was like, I got to try and do something to help our O-line and give us a little bit of relief. But, that's the big thing I would say is that, Coach Orich has those guys flying around, and I think we have some pretty good depth up on the O-line, on the defensive line, we have some good depth. So that should help with being able to rotate guys. Leo Tamba was a guy that was really hard for us to block all spring as well. So I think there's some guys over there on the defensive side that can have have a really big impact in the fall.
So I want to ask about the secondary as well. Last season, Idaho finished last in Big Sky in pass defense. This is, of course, a new season with a new coaching staff. Based off what you've seen in practice and what fans saw from the spring, how's the progression of the secondary going?
Yeah, I think they're playing well. Marcus Harris and Jeremiah Salam were solid at corner. And then, between McCormick and Matthias, I don't want to butcher the last name, but, our transfer from New Mexico that came in and solidified the other safety spot. So I think they're solid in the back end. And then I think, Coach Orich with his scheme, it's definitely a little bit bend, don't break. They'll let you throw some hitches and rally to the ball and that type of thing. So having gone against Coach Orich when he was at South Dakota, I know, kind of his defensive philosophy. And I also know that's what Coach Eck wanted too, is, don't give up the big play and make the other team earn it. And, I think even in, even when we scored against them on Saturday, it was like an 11-play drive, so they're pretty good at not allowing the big play and making you continue to execute.
Coach, I think we probably kind of know the answer to this, but I want to hear it from your mouth rather than the things Brian and I say, because, again, nobody wants to listen to us. People are here to listen to you. What position groups would you say are the most ready for fall, and which groups are going to need a little bit more extra work?
I think our running back position, just because of the depth and experience there, I feel really good about those guys. Roshan's a leader. Eli has some big playability, and then, Nick Romano and Andre Carter give us a lot of depth, and even Trent Elstead ran the ball really well on Saturday, and he performed well in one of the other scrimmages too. So I think running back, we got a lot of depth, a lot of experience. To me, obviously my position group, quarterback, there's just not a lot of playing experience. Talking about pretty much all, freshman type guys in the room. And then I think it slowed us down a little bit at the start of spring, having 7 guys in the room. Obviously for the last half of spring ball, when we got down to 4 guys, then that allowed a lot more reps, which is just, we're going to need a lot of that to be ready to play in the fall. And then, I think tight end is another group where we're kind of, sorting through, obviously Connor Whitney missed the majority of the spring with a thumb injury, came back and played a little bit in the spring game, but, I think he missed 8 or 9 practices. So with him out, we had a lot of guys that were kind of getting their first action in the spring as well. So, that's another position group that it's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of sorting out to figure out, what the guys' skill sets are and what's going to be the best for us. And that's something that we'll do a lot in a game week, especially, the quarterback and the offensive line, you shape it to what you can do best, but the other position groups, we can really personnel some things, that we did not do this spring, to put our guys in the best position, with, what kind of blocks you're asking them to make, what kind of runs you're asking them to make. We didn't go through all that of the spring of, okay, this is our short yardage back. This is our, third down back. This is that, we wanted all the guys to be exposed to all of the offense. So, those are things where I think we can be a lot better as well.
You mentioned earlier that a lot of guys in the receiver room got moved to the defense. Another receiver, Alex Moore, got moved to tight end. Didn't see a whole lot of play with the previous staff, and then seemed to have a great spring. What kind of goes into determining what position you want a player to play for you rather than what he played under the previous regime? And speaking of another guy, Zach Borish is a longtime favorite of Tubbs at the club. Now he's listed as a slash, and you're putting him all over the field. What kind of goes into the thought process of moving guys to different positions and trying to find a better way to play them?
Yeah, it's really hard to know. And we just knew when we took over and we saw Alex Moore and we saw him in the weight room, we're like, man, he's got a big frame. He's a big kid. And we didn't have enough tight ends and we had too many wide receivers. We're like, well, maybe he can move. And he was like 9th string at receiver. So it was like, well, if you want to get on the field and get on the field faster, you could move to tight end. And I mean, shoot, I can sit here and pretend to be a genius now and say I knew that he was going to be great, but we had no idea. We're like, he's a big kid. Let's see how it works. And he's going to be a difference maker. I mean, we've had some great tight ends at South Dakota State, and they're a vital part of our offense. And I think, Alex isn't a complete player yet, but man, he's dynamic in the passing game and a big target. I can see him catching a lot of balls for us in the fall. I think our first 3 scrimmages, he had 4 touchdowns in the first 3 scrimmages. So, and then Saturday he was coming off a little bit of a hip pointer, so we didn't play him as much, but he still had, a couple big explosive plays. So, so we were fortunate in that, but we thought he had the type of frame, and, he bought in as well. Cause I think when we moved him, he was like 212 pounds and now he's 227. So we were thinking he can get up to that, 235, 240 range by fall camp. And, just continue to develop as a blocker while maintaining his, speed and strength, and he can be a real difference maker at that position. And then Zach Borish, I started out, I wanted to give him a fair shake at quarterback. Talking to Zach when I took over, he'd been like moved around so much and not done too much that he kind of didn't have a home. So initially I wanted to give Zach some stability playing him at quarterback. And obviously I'd seen the film of, he's dynamic with the ball in his hands, and then they really hadn't let him throw. So we didn't know. And then, we let him throw a lot early in spring ball. And, I think Zach will admit to you too, that didn't go that well. He just hadn't done it in a long time. And the development is behind and the reads and things like that. So, that kind of led to us shifting him to wide receiver. Just trying to give a little bit more stability to him. And then we know we can move him around. We can use him for some wildcat things. We can use him different ways. But just trying to, see what we had and see what the best fit would be.
I have one last question for you, and then I'll kick it back over to Brian. Obviously, Alex Moore, you'd consider a surprise this spring. Even you said it. You look like a genius, but you didn't know he was going to explode like that. Are there any other surprises that you'd like to shout out? Guys that did maybe not a better job than you expected, but guys that were a pleasant surprise.
I think two that jump out right away. Giovanni McCoy. Kind of started at the. I don't even know what he was the first day, 4th or 5th string, something like that. Like he was down the depth chart. He was kind of in my doghouse from, when we took over. He had some academic things from first semester that he hadn't taken care of business. So was kind of in my doghouse a little bit at the start of spring ball, and I really wasn't sure, how he was going to do. And, he's a gamer, and he really came on as the spring progressed. Unfortunately with the fans, he probably played about the worst he's played in the spring game. But he really progressed, and even in the spring game, he had some struggles, but he still led us on 3 scoring drives. So of the 7 possessions he was in, so he still did some good things, and anticipates throws well, and just kind of has a knack. And then the other guy I would say is JJ, Jermaine Jackson. JJ was a guy coming off of and we had an ACL, I believe, in the spring season, and kind of didn't exactly know, what we had when we got here. And then obviously he's not a very big guy. So just seeing him, I wasn't too sure about this 5'6" receiver that we had. But he plays big, he's really physical blocking. And that's something that we're going to ask those guys to do and challenge them to do, so he plays big blocking. And then, with his speed and jumping ability, he has a big catch radius, so even though he's a small guy, you can kind of put it in the vicinity, and like I said, between his speed and his leaping ability, he can go get it. So, and he had a little bit of hamstring issue through spring ball, so he missed some time too. But when he was out there, he was dynamic, and I think he can be a big time playmaker for us.
So Coach Eck was quoted in the Idaho Press as saying Giovanni McCoy is probably a tad ahead of CJ Jordan in the quarterback room. How would you assess spring ball for both McCoy and Jordan? Because, just in terms of reacting to what Coach Eck said, a tad ahead means not that much, but clearly ahead.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement. And, I conveyed that when I met with the kids and talked to them. And, we're going to continue to have competition throughout fall camp. So I told those guys, they know that too, that, this thing has a long ways to go in the quarterback competition. CJ is capable of big things, but he just has to be more consistent. So he'd have some great plays, then he'd have some really bad plays. And, at the quarterback spot, you really have to avoid those, the big sacks, the turnovers, that type of thing. So really stressing with him of just don't press, let the game come to you. Don't always look for the big play. Cause just in the scrimmage situations, he took too many sacks, and, those things are going to be tough on an offense. It makes it hard as a play caller when it's 2nd and 20. But he has some big time ability, and there's the ability there. It's just, learning the nuance of the position and what we're looking for. And like I said, I think the biggest thing is just letting the game come to him. Where that was probably Giovanni's biggest strength. Giovanni, not quite as, not as big or fast as strong as CJ, but Giovanni did a nice job of letting the game come to him, taking what was there, and getting rid of the football in a timely fashion. So he was really impressive that way of just throwing on time and anticipating windows and, throwing guys open. So he really took big strides.
So at this point, what is your offense looking for out of the quarterback position? As in, are you looking for a more traditional drop back passer? You're going to have guys take more direct snaps or more out of shotgun. Of course, if people weren't in Boise, they of course saw very little because we couldn't. Mm-hmm. So from this far away, what are you guys looking for out of quarterback?
Yeah, we want a guy that can distribute the ball and get it to our playmakers. And then, we're always going to adjust a little bit with how much we run the quarterback. When we were at South Dakota State in the spring season, we had a running quarterback that I think he had 600-700 yards in 10 games. And then this fall, our guy had like 200 yards rushing in 15 games. So we have to see a little bit with who the guy is going to be, and then obviously shape the offense around them. And that kind of went back to what I talked about earlier, even of just all the positions. We were kind of exposing him to the whole offense. So once we find out who the guy is, then we'll shape it around them even more. So like CJ would probably run the ball a little bit more with the quarterback if he's the guy. If Giovanni's the guy, we'll probably have more quick passes where he can get the ball out of his hands quickly. So I think that's one thing that we have to do. And we talk about we don't need a runner at quarterback, but we want a good athlete at quarterback, just to have some of that escapability. And like I said, I think we have some pretty good skill guys. I haven't gotten to see Hatton yet, but everybody raves about him and his ability. So I think with Hatton and Therese, and then when I talked about JJ really stepping up, and then Alex Moore, Connor Whitney, you're going to have some weapons for the quarterback to, make sure that we have somebody that can get the ball in those guys' hands. So
before I throw it to Dallas for maybe a subject change, you just alluded to the answer probably varying a little bit, but how do you expect to balance the game plan between passing and rushing? X talked a lot in interviews about wanting to build a team through the line and establishing the run as a way to open up the offense. But what does that mean for us in terms of the actual balance of running to passing?
Yeah, I think we strive to be balanced, and then the big thing with getting the run game going or having the threat of a run game, we like to play action pass and also do some naked bootlegs and get the quarterbacks out on the edge. And I think it does two things. One, it just takes pressure off the quarterback when you can break the pocket, because then instead of having to go through the progression and, seeing leverage and safeties and all that other stuff, like when you roll out, it just kind of becomes backyard football of, is this guy open? If he's open, throw him the ball. So that takes some pressure off the quarterback, and then it also takes pressure off the O-line and pass protection. So, and then, we want to keep the defense on their toes with, we want to be able to throw the ball when it's a run situation and pass the ball when it's a run type situation, and then run the ball when it's maybe 3rd and 10 and we can surprise the defense and get a first down. Again, kind of taking that pressure off the O-line of having to pick up all these crazy blitzes and things like that. So, we want to make the defense defend everything. And then the bottom line is we got to be able to shape it around, who our best players are. When we were at South Dakota State and we had, Dallas Goddard, who went on to be a 2nd-round pick, and we had Jake Wenicky, who is a really good receiver that is up in Canada now, and Taryn Christian, a really good quarterback who's up in Canada. 2016, 2017, we threw the ball around a lot. And then you get like to this last year, we had a really good quarterback that got picked in the 7th round. Well, we had a running back that led the nation in rushing. So, we took a little bit, we probably didn't throw as much as you'd think you would when you have an NFL draft pick quarterback, but it's always, fitting things around your personnel.
Love hearing that. I think there's a generation of Vandal fans that are terrified of coaches forcing players to the system rather than adapting the system to the players. So our excitement is at an all-time high right now. But I do have a couple more questions about the quarterback. I know we've talked quarterbacks, and we keep getting them from our Patreons. Again, if anybody's listening and wants to ask questions, patreon.com/Tubs at the club, #OnlyTubs. Coach, the elephant in the room from our listeners, are you guys going to explore the transfer market for a quarterback? Right now, the room is obviously skewed pretty young. Not a whole lot of experience there. What's the game plan over the summer as you move towards the fall?
Yeah, I think it would be ideal if we can find somebody with a little bit more experience. And, we've talked to the players about that too, that we may bring somebody in and, that if we do, nothing's set in stone. They still get, whoever we bring in is going to have to come in and compete and earn the job. But like you said, just when you look at the depth chart and see that you have freshmen written next to everybody's name, obviously you'd love to, bring a little bit more experience to the room. So that's definitely something, that we're exploring, and the transfer portal has made it a little bit crazy. There's a lot of names to explore, so trying to weigh through that and, make sure that it's a fit, so we're not just rushing to bring anybody in here. We want to make sure it's a great fit and, that it's someone that we feel confident about.
The situation will obviously change here depending on quarterbacks that come in or don't come in or how the guys play. But are we going to see a quarterback announced before the first game, or is everybody going to have to wait for that first snap to find out who's going to be the guy this year?
Well, that's probably going to be the guy, the big cheese, Coach Eck. That's going to be his decision, what type of gamesmanship that he wants to do with that. So, I'll certainly the players will know, the week going into the game. Who, I think by when we break fall camp, the players will know who the starter is, and then, like I said, that's a little bit more up to Coach Eck than me of how much of that head coach gamesmanship that he wants to have on display.
How many scholarships does Idaho have to play with moving into fall camp? Maybe not in a specific number, but ballpark. What are you guys looking to grab, and how many guys are you looking to add?
Yeah, I think we touched on it earlier, but just our offensive line depth. We just don't have a lot of it in that room either. So that's a position. Again, if we can find the right person in the transfer portal. Definitely looking to add some offensive line depth, and so those are kind of the biggest ones on offense. And I know defense is looking to potentially add a couple guys as well. So, it's a balance, and I think Coach Eck wants to build this through high school guys, and that's something that now that I'm out here and see the talent that there is in Idaho and Washington and Oregon, like I think we can get a good base of our team from those three states and then get into California a little bit and be in great shape. But, in the short term, it's definitely, we have to explore some transfers. And, we had a couple come in at the semester, Jason Hallback. I'm really happy that we got him to come in because he's solidified things over at the right tackle spot for us. So, we just always have to evaluate it and see what's best for the team. And that's the bottom line is, can we improve our team? And, we're going to do what we have to do to, make sure that we're putting a competitive team out there.
So I have a broader question. We've talked about position groups and progressions we might want to see, but my understanding too is one of the big responsibilities you guys had first, your first set of spring ball practices is establishing the type of culture that you're hoping the program embodies. Could you give listeners a description of, in your mind, what type of culture are you, Coach Eck, and all the other coaches trying to establish for University of Idaho football?
Yeah, now you're putting me on the spot to remember Coach Eck's pillars here, but he's talked to the guys about accountability, doing the little things and doing them right, urgency of just that urgency to get better every day, and another big one that he's talked to the guys about is grit. Of just when things are tough, how are you going to respond? So those are things that we're trying to, instill with the guys right now. And then the last one is toughness. So those are the four things that he's kind of talked to the guys throughout spring ball about, because we know, we may not be the most talented team in the Big Sky next year, but, we're not going to back down. We're going to go out and compete. And we're going to battle. And that's the type of thing that we want to have, in our guys, because, I think we all, just scoreboard watching from last year and not being here, they played a couple of really good teams tough, and then they played a couple of really good teams and got destroyed. We're obviously, just watching those games on film, there's a lot of just self-inflicted wounds. So, Coach Eck talks about that too, of, the Vandals can't beat the Vandals. If the other team is better than us and executes, better and plays better, then we got to tip our cap to them. But, we don't want to give away games. So the Vandals can't beat the Vandals. And then I think the big thing is we want these guys to, enjoy the process and have fun with it. Again, they're kind of walking around on eggshells when we took over, and, we want them to be able to come by the office, enjoy their time in the football building and, work hard and lay it all on the line.
We've talked a lot of football. We've got a few more minutes with you on Coach Schleusner. We have to transition to a segment made famous on accident the first time we had Coach Janicek on, dumb questions. So first dumb question I have for you, because our show is named after the Corner Club. If you walk into the Corner Club after a win, what's your go-to order?
I'm really not a big drinker. But if I am celebrating, then I got to have a margarita, a little bit of tequila. So I don't know if that's exactly a Corner Club special, the margarita, but we'll see what they can do.
Is the order the same after a loss?
I guess I'm not a big drinker, so probably if we lose, I usually don't even have a drink. I'm just ready to get back to work and, get going the next day. So
we're not asking for your street address, but we have asked both Janicek and Rob Orich. You living in Moscow or Pullman?
Moscow.
Dallas, I'm going to let you take it the next direction.
That is, first off, our listeners love to hear that. Previous coaches have chosen to live in Pullman and they get booed for those things. So you're already off on a great start. I'm assuming the answer is probably the tequila, but say Idaho wins the Little Brownstein, beats Montana for the first time in decades. What do you do with it? Are you drinking tequila out of it? Are you just holding it in the air? What's the plan if you get the Little Brownstein?
I've played for a bunch of traveling trophies over the years, and I'll say as a coach, I've never held on to one. After the big win, I mean, that's the players' deal. And, they're pouring their heart and soul on it, putting their bodies on the line. And then probably as a coach, I'm always kind of on to the next one too. So I know a couple of our coaches a couple of years ago, we beat NDSU for the Nickel Trophy and it clinched the conference title. And a lot of people were taking pictures and all that stuff after the game. But I was just like, man, we got the playoffs next week. Like, great that we beat NDSU, but on to bigger things. And, hopefully we got to beat Montana first, but, ultimately the goal isn't to beat Montana. The goal is to, compete for national championships. So, I'll let the players enjoy that and go from there. So.
Love it. How does obviously you haven't played a game yet in the Kibbe Dome. Probably haven't really coached in it either because I'm assuming spent the entire spring outside. That's what the pictures seem to indicate. But how does the Kibbe Dome rank among all the other dome stadiums you may have played in or coached in?
Well, I actually I did coach in a game here one time. I was at the University of North Dakota, and we came out here, I believe it was like week 1 in like 2011 or so. Somewhere in there. I'm trying to remember the year. I'm getting old. 2011 or 2012, and Idaho put it to us pretty good. And it was a great crowd. I believe it was the home opener. So just seeing that game and being in that environment, I didn't remember a lot about our trip out here, but I knew that it was a tough place to play. And I knew, at that time they were just coming off a great season. And, I think it was 2011 is when we played, but they were, the Kibbe Dome was rocking and just seeing that and having played in a bunch of domes from the Fargo Dome to the Uni Dome of, just how big of an advantage that those can be. And, I'm not a big video game guy, but my son who was telling me the cult status of the Kibbe Dome on the NCAA football game. So, so I know it's a unique venue and, it does have that wow factor when you walk into it. And I haven't got to see it with the turf down yet, but I'm excited to see that.
This might be the dumbest question I have for you, but Coach Eck told us all about your trek to your first stop in Moscow just after you guys were hired. It was a little interesting and you had some travel difficulties. Do you want to give us any more detail about how much fun you had trying to get to Moscow your very first time?
Yeah, that was a crazy experience. So, my wife and I decided that she was going to get a new car. So found a car out in the Seattle area, and just not being from here and not understanding it, that it was in Bremerton, which I guess is like you land in the airport and you're on the wrong side of the water. So already it was adding a bunch of time to my day because I didn't realize I was going to have to like go up and around. And then, I started to hear reports about the mountain pass and how it was going to be. And, talking to the people at the dealership, I'll say that most people in Seattle don't even know where Idaho is. So they were pretty crazy to think for them that anybody would go on the east side of the mountains. So I didn't get a lot of help. And finally I talked to one guy that was like, oh, well, yeah, you're not going to be able to pass, but you go down to Portland and then you can shoot over. And then, so I drove all the way down to Portland, and then there was about 2 inches of snow on the road and they closed all the roads. So being from the Midwest and having driven through many a blizzard, I was quite shocked, but I did what I had to do, and got the hotel for the night and got up and went in the morning. But it was definitely an interesting experience. And like I said, the people in Seattle, I think a lot of them don't even know where Idaho is on a map. So.
Can you tell us the make and model of the car that you went to all this trouble to get?
So it was a Honda Accord, and it was like a 2-door V6. So my wife, needed the V6 engine. She needed the 2-door, and it's like a sports coupe. So she liked the color. Just it checked all the boxes. So definitely, had to do that for her, moving her across the country.
We have one last question for you. We call it the reversal, where you can ask us any question you want, any topic, sports related, not sports related, whatever. But I have to filibuster you. We have to get our ad read in while we have a high count of live listeners. So while we're going through the ad read, feel free to take a second to come up with your question. As always, Around the Bar brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. If you are looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, don't look past your backyard. Venture into the largest protected wilderness in the continental U.S., located right here in the great state of Idaho. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway, and you can even check out special trips like the one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, take in the history along the river, and fish some of the most remote stretches of river in the country. You just bring your clothes, let HRE handle the rest. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal owned and operated since 1976 and ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. What are you waiting for? Find out what it's like to grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 800-262-1882 or check them out at hughesriver.com. And with that, we're going to turn the floor over to Coach Schleusner.
I will say I'm learning a lot about Idaho in the last week. I had never driven down to Boise. I just got here, and like I said, lived in the Midwest my whole life. So just seeing Riggins and driving through that area, like Riggins and McCall on the way back from Boise. This is unbelievable how beautiful it is out here, and excited to tell my wife about it. So that little ad plug you just did, you may have got yourself a customer now, because I was already telling my wife that we had to go to Riggins, especially when we fly our son out this summer, is that we got to go do something out there. So, and then I like the beginning of the show too, because I have not got to see much Coach Linehan film. So I was excited to see that, to see Coach Linehan out there high stepping. So, haven't pulled up any of his film yet. So, but the legend that is Coach Linehan. So, so a question for you guys, I guess I would just say, how did this get started? How did the Tubs at the club, how did this start out, and how long has this been going for?
There are a few answers depending on what we're talking about. I'm going to talk about the podcast because I can't talk about the website very well. They were started separately. Website was started by Sean Kramer. He's University of Idaho alum, journalist, worked for the Spokesman Review, and he one day decided that there was not enough Idaho coverage, so he went to the Corner Club and wrote up the code for the website and wrote some articles, and that was how the website started. The podcast was started by neither me nor Dallas. Former host, the guy who found the podcast, Chris Hammond, He started the podcast with some friends in 2018, which was the first year Idaho played in the Big Sky Conference after moving down. And my route to getting onto the podcast was I would send 7,000 direct messages to the Tubs at the club Twitter account. And eventually, Chris just said, hey, you want to do basketball for us? And I said yes, which of course was the start of Idaho's awful drought. We have barely covered 10 conference wins since starting the show in basketball. However, fingers crossed that changes immediately in football. And eventually, I just became a co-host of the main show. That was my route on, but Chris was the guy who started. Dallas, I'm going to let you explain your route on too.
Basically the same thing. I was a journalist here, graduated from the School of Broadcasting in Idaho, did some TV stuff here in Spokane, and then left that, started following this podcast since about day one. I did the same thing Brian did, just sent a million questions in all the time, and to the point that they just couldn't get rid of me, and here we are. I do want to call out Coach Slice. I don't know if you can see the screen. Colin Hughes commenting, would love to have you, Coach Slice. That is the famous Colin Hughes of Hughes River Expedition, graciously inviting you to come down and enjoy one of those trips along the pristine beaches.
Well, that's awesome. I may have to take him up on it because, like I said, we were, I told my wife driving through there that we got to go down there this summer. In the Midwest, Moscow Mountain is like unbelievable. Looking out my window every day from the Midwest, so driving through Riggins and McCall and that whole area down to Boise was I was definitely staring out the window a lot. So,
well, fantastic.
Coach, great to have you on. Dallas and I are doing the exact same thing. Great to have you on. Good luck in the upcoming season, and until next time, go Vandals.
Go Vandals. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, that has been Coach Luke Schleusner, who is now out. So, dude, it was great to have Coach Luke Schleusner on. Obviously, a long day. And we had to reschedule the timing because he was still working at the initial time of 6:45 p.m. So we pushed back when he could. Great to have him on for that 45 minutes in change, talk spring football. And Dallas, I mean, I'm going to throw it to you. Take whatever direction, react to the interview, talk about spring football, or how about this? Talk about both. What stuck out to you that we were able to go over relating to spring football?
Man, I just love hearing the same thing from Coach Slice that we heard from Coach Eck, that they are looking to adapt their system to the players, and they're not going to try to pigeonhole guys into roles that maybe they aren't perfect for them. I love hearing that. I thought that was a complaint we saw a lot in the previous era of Vandal football, and it's so frustrating to me when you see a guy is good at something, you try to make him do something he's not particularly good at. That does not seem to be the case with this team. I love the direction. I love the positivity. I couldn't be more excited about this. Even Coach Slice admitting that, the offense did not quite click as well as he wanted, and there's some depth issues, obviously, and it wasn't quite what was hoped for. But it certainly sounds like the right guys are in charge to get things fixed, get everything rolling the way it should be. And I don't know. Every time we do one of these interviews, all I can think about is how excited I am for this fall to hurry up and get here. I've never wanted a summer to end quicker than this one.
My first takeaway was how many of our listeners were triggered with Vandal PTSD when Luke talked about Vandals beating the Vandals. I know, I almost brought it up as a separate question because my first thought immediately was, oh my God, he knows. And like you said, man, that is, at this point, that's not really a concern that I have. Do I think there's reason to be a little concerned about the offensive line? Yeah. Now, of course, he said there were injuries, so they probably looked worse than they actually are in spring game based off injuries. Do I think there's reason to be concerned about quarterback? Yeah, we'll get into that. And listeners, that's part of why we asked a handful of quarterback questions. We've tried to not be football morons who only talk about quarterback and nothing else. But look, we can jump in now to the spring game itself. The story was the defense. And for people who did not get to watch the game in person or listen to the broadcast, yeah, there was a weird scoring system. I don't really care about the weird scoring system. Here's the gist of it. Idaho's offense had the ball the entire game and scored 1 field goal and 1 touchdown. So different from a typical game where your offense only has the ball, half-ish time. Idaho had possession of the ball the whole time because it was always Idaho's offense, and that turned into 2 scores. But the story that is the reason to be excited about part of that is defensively we look legitimately good from what we've been told, Dallas.
Absolutely, and I think the things we'd heard were that the defensive line, the front 7, were extremely strong, and of course, the first things we hear from Coach Slice is that the defensive line looked great, and Leo Tombo was unblockable, which is incredible for the guy coming off of an injury where he missed essentially all of last season. Could not be more excited to see what Rob Orge's dogs are going to do. Our comment thread went a little bit nuts because I think people love Coach Orge, the energy he brings. I think our defense is primed for a massive turnaround, realistically, mostly just because of the change in coaching. But it sounds like the defense is going to be what is going to carry this team moving forward. Hopefully the offense will click a little bit more. Like Coach Slice said, 15 practices in the spring, 29 in the fall. So almost double the time to try to make some of that stuff gel. Hopefully guys are going to get a little bit healthier. We'll see what happens. Guys, we're months away from Vandal football again, and that is so exciting to me. Damn it, I missed it.
We'll shift back to the spring game again, but I can't believe I didn't bring this up. This is the second coach who I know they're not trying to, but the indirect shade to the previous coaching staff makes me feel so goddamn happy. When made reference to had some games where we're real competitive, and then then there were other games, or referencing, hey, Idaho can't beat Idaho because that's what they identified as happening in some of the losses. Having someone else say that, now they say it in the positive way, like it is clearly like the point of them talking is not. He's talking about what he wants to be different. The point of that is not to talk about previous coaching staff, but maybe we throw Marten in here for a second. Marten, you noticed that, correct? Second time we've had someone indirectly describe what they want Idaho football to become. And it's in terms of it's because Idaho football's in this. How was your reaction to hearing that?
It reminded me of the Coach Ulrich comment earlier. I was like, wait a second, I've heard that before.
Did this one hurt us bad, Marten, as the number one Bresky fan in the world?
It was more smooth.
You heard it from Marten. It was smooth. And it was. And the point, of course, again, I'm going to over-explain this because I just don't want to sound like putting words in their mouth because we're not. The point of his comment was to describe what Idaho football needs to become. It's just us who've been here for the whole ride. Well, we understand if that's what it's becoming, we know what it was. And hearing someone else say it feels so goddamn good. Back to the spring game, Dallas. We know, grain of salt, offensive line is injured. We know, grain of salt, offense, as Coach Schleusner referenced, offense has more they have to pick up that they had to learn in the spring than the defense in terms of number of sets, number of plays. So different learning curve on the offensive side. So we know all that, but look, we got to talk about what didn't happen as well. Quarterback situation looked rough. New Tubbs correspondent, whether he knows it or not, and noted observer of bad quarterback play, former Idaho State beat reporter Jordan Kay. He was present at the game. He talked to me. He says similar to what Schleusner said. First, the quarterbacks did not have a lot of time. So, hey, grain of salt there with quarterback performance. When they can't get rhythm and the line is not yet strong enough to buy them time, you got to accept that that's going to make them not look great. But Jordan Kay also told me when the guys did have time, they sailed passes that people who watched CJ Jordan play in the spring or people who saw Giovanni McCoy play last year would be surprised to hear about pretty drastic accuracy issues. So Dallas, hearing that, what's your reaction quarterback wise?
At first, the reaction was panic. That's not what we saw out of either of those guys last year. Again, we saw CJ in very, very limited action between the spring and the fall, just with the injury situation. We saw a little bit more of Giovanni McCoy, and obviously had a couple struggles in some games that he realistically was probably playing in because he was the 4th or 5th quarterback. That 50-point blowouts, you're putting guys in to get guys experience. It was a little bit nerve-wracking, but then when he followed up a little bit more, this was more directly about CJ, but saying that CJ is out there looking for the big play every single time, and that's what's causing some of his problems. That screams to me a guy who hasn't played a whole lot. And I'm assuming he said that Gio has done a little bit better of letting the game come to him and throwing guys open and making the correct play rather than the big play every time. But it's concerning that nobody stepped up and had an incredible game. I was really hoping that some guy would just rip the throat out of this competition and just end it there in the spring game. Definitely did not happen. Sounds like there may or may not be grad transfers coming in. Who knows how open the job is or what's going to happen there. But it did make me actually feel a little bit better hearing Coach Slice talk about it, just in that it's guys that are freshmen that are trying to throw a touchdown on every single play. And you grow out of that with time. Well, most guys grow out of the time. Guys like Rex Grossman made an NFL career out of just fucking I'm throwing it deep. So it works for some guys, but in this instance, I feel better about the quarterback position than I did a week ago, which is not something I was expecting to hear. After Brian, you have the stats probably better offhand. You want to give us the quarterback stats from the spring game?
Oh yeah, I have them. And asterisk for listeners, because the staffing for spring games is not the same as the staffing for an average game. You should consider these stats to be broadly accurate, but not as accurate as in a typical game. Quarterback splits. I'm only going to talk about Giovanni and CJ because, the other quarterbacks, they took no stats for Tyler Webb. I don't know why, because the broadcast certainly said he played. But McLeod Croughton also played, but has since transferred. Well, he's entered the transfer portal. So in terms of Vandal football, that's not relevant. Giovanni McCoy, he was 8 of 19 for 134 yards. He also threw 1 interception, threw for 0 touchdowns. His longest pass play was 40 yards. CJ Jordan went 5 of 13 for 47 yards. His longest pass play was 30 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. CJ did take a couple more sacks than Giovanni, including a safety, which, hey, that's the stat reference. I do want to make one quick acknowledgement. We asked Coach Slice about transfer coming in, and look, it sounds like, don't be shocked, guys, if transfer comes in. There is another freshman who'll be joining the quarterback room who, based off there not being a clear winner from the spring. Now, there's a clear top 2 that Coach Eck referenced of is clearly Giovanni and CJ of the current roster are the guys competing for the starting spot. I would not yet rule out Ridge Dutchcall. He, of course, didn't get to participate in the spring, but if Ridge comes on and looks great on campus, he doesn't have a veteran he has to unseat. So that's another wild card for us, in addition to, a grad transfer, of course, is brought in to start. But if the quarterback room is not settled, it's not settled, which means the new guy who would be Ridge Dutchcall, who has not had a chance yet, he is probably not a guy we should be writing off. Now he'll be like the 400th freshman on the roster to be quarterback, but if they're all freshmen, there's not necessarily that much of an experience gap between them. So that's a name I'd be paying attention to come fall, Dallas.
And for anybody that doesn't follow recruiting in the way that we do, and by we, I mean Marten. Marten is the recruiting guru around here. Ridge Dutchcall actually ended up being a higher recruited prospect than CJ, who is one of the highest rated Vandal recruits of all time. So for all the great feelings we have about CJ and all this talent he's got, Ridge Dutchcall's got just as much of it if you look at the 24/7 numbers. So we've got a handful of really highly talented and really highly recruited and talented guys. None of them have grabbed the job so far. We could see could be Gio, could be CJ, could be Ridge, could be a grad transfer. Who knows? This could be a situation we truly don't have any idea until the first snap of the first game. It sounds like it's going to end up that way. Not to put any words in any of the coaches' mouths. Obviously, Coach Slice mentioned the gamesmanship of the head coach. I call it caginess because we like to think Paul was being cagey with withholding that kind of information. That information might get withheld. They might announce the starter 3 days in. Who knows? But all we know right now is nobody has proven the quarterback job is theirs right this minute. Except I see TATC commenter saying there's this Hatton guy on the basketball team. Maybe he can play QB. Well, if he's anything as good as his cousins, maybe he should be on the football team. Probably certainly serve him better than the basketball team has. But that's a discussion for another episode. No veggies tonight.
He'd get to experience more wins. We know that. Dallas, look, we have to at some point close spring football. I got a couple questions to you that I will then answer as though I asked them to myself. First question, non-quarterback, because like we've talked this position to death because it is an unknown. And we've previously talked offensive line. Schleusner brought it up, but like, hey, last week, Dallas, you said that in your mind is probably the biggest issue that we know we need to have resolved. End of spring, I want to take your temperature on Idaho football. Where are you at? Are you trending up? Are you trending down? Are you steady?
It's very weird coming from the guy that's known as the most negative person on this podcast. It's actually trending up for me. And I did not expect to say that a week ago. I feel really good about where Idaho football is for some reason. And I don't know if it's just the afterglow of that interview, but hearing Slice talk about a lot of these offensive struggles and how you try to fix them, adding depth, just the quarterbacks getting more and more reps and learning I think the word he used was intricate, learning their intricate offense a little bit better. I actually feel better about Vandal football now than I did a week ago. And overall, I feel like the spring was a pretty huge success. I've never really cared for spring football, but anytime you can solidify a position for Zach Borish, you can get a guy like Alex Moore out of the bottom of the receiver room into the top of the tight end room, and not just out of necessity, but it looks like he's going to be really good there from what we hear. Like, I'm actually feeling really good about this. The defense, obviously we've talked about it all spring long about how they've looked a lot better than they did before. And yes, we make the jokes about how the coaching is just, it's a huge change just going from one guy that didn't know what he was doing to a guy that seems destined to be a head coach somewhere. I'm trending up, even though I know the offense did not look good in the spring game. I'm trending up.
You join live viewer Captain 58, who in the comments section, guys, which anyone's welcome to join. Captain 58 says trending up. These coaches are so much more transparent than our last staff. Correct. My answer to my trend. We're closing in on eventually having to have the managing expectations discussion. Now, that is a discussion we have when the season starts. From here, mostly trending up. Like defensively, I was floored to hear how good we look defensively. That's what we've been told the entire spring, is that the energy on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, look, the energy of the team in terms of the players, way better, way more positive than previously. The energy from the coaches, way better, much more oriented towards making people feel confident. Eck even talked in an interview, might have been Idaho Press, might have been with Stephen Wiebe, where his view now is the old school coaching approach was you essentially yell the negatives to players when they screw up, and then you quietly whisper the positive to like build that bridge back up. His view is that today, look, you got to flip that. You got to scream the positives, and the corrective stuff is done in a little more private type of way. Well, that's a much more modern disciplinary approach. I love that. That's what we're doing. And I think some of the energy around the culture of the program that Schleiss didn't talk about it in that way, but we've been told, look, if you go to practice, you are going to see a lot of upbeat, ecstatic coaches, a lot of players looking like they're happy where they're at, just night and day from where we were last season with Paul Petrino on staff. So in that sense, I'm trending up. I will say, I know, take a grain of salt with the offense, but one touchdown and one field goal is alarmingly bad in the spring, which means, look, this Coach Eck has said championships are not won in the spring. I'm going to accept that because obviously they're not. But if there's one area that we need to improve a lot more, it's that side of the ball. I will say new kicker, Ricardo Chavez, hitting a 52-yarder in the rain was promising because special teams, we were pretty bad in terms of our kicking game last season. So that's trending up. So the big picture, yeah, trending up while trending up while beginning to see the things that we're going to have to kind of sort through. We're just going to have to see improvement if the excitement we see today is going to materialize in the fall. And Dallas, I guess the other question that I have for you. I know you said that that you're trending upward. How have you bought your season tickets yet, man?
I bought my season tickets literally the moment I could after EC was announced. It was paid for immediately. I honestly probably wasn't going to renew if PP was going to come back for another year, but once he was gone, I was like, okay, we're in, and I renewed immediately.
Man, I'm on the spot. I'm the only one who has not purchased my season tickets. I'm going to, guys. I've just been a lazy piece of shit. That's it. Everyone on Tubbs will have season tickets. Martin, want to pull you in real quick. Where are you trending Idaho football?
Martin, you're muted.
Goddamn grandpa, you're muted.
Fuck. I'm feeling positive. I'm feeling good. It's trending up as always.
Yeah. Dallas, the actual question I forgot to ask you. Minus the broadly improving, all the good stuff that everyone knows is going around Idaho football. If you can pick one or two developments from the spring that you are most stoked about, what are they?
Does not having Paul Petrino as the coach count as one?
No, because he stopped being our coach when we broke the story in November.
Well, just asking. So I'm gonna.
I was more just patting myself on the back.
I'm going to tweak that then. I'm going to say having a coach that doesn't berate his players and act like a dickhead to anybody that walks around him. I think that's going to be huge. I cannot imagine this regime going anything like the last one. I can't imagine we're going to be getting messaged by current players and current parents and former parents all talking about how shady and deceptive everything was and how everything they were just being fed a crock of shit from a guy that was kind of just a dick to people. That is number one for me. That also ties into the social media aspect. That's my number two. It feels like Idaho football wants to be relevant again, and I haven't felt that in a long time. Those are my two developments. I know they're nothing on the actual football field, but it's for the actual program. The right guy is in charge. I know, not to open up the FCS FBS debate, it's an FCS coordinator with FCS experience. It feels like Idaho is committed to trying to win and trying to make people care again. And it hasn't felt like that in quite a while.
Speaking of PTSD inducing, man, the dead horse comes up is just indirectly referenced. And immediately my reaction is, God damn it, I have to fucking talk about Conference USA again. But we moved in a different direction. So my big developments, by the way, before we talk about my big developments, listeners all noticed. Dallas says, hey, can I include Paul Petrino? I say no. What did Dallas just include? Of course, Paul Petrino. Okay. That ghost will be gone someday. And that day is not today.
And it's not going to be anywhere soon enough. Let me tell you that.
Martin, please throw that on the screen. Listeners, we may have really sophisticated humor coming on the live show. We're unraveling where Tubbs at the Club comments, PP comments as the direction of the show. Martin muted, laughing his ass off. Is that muted on purpose? I don't know. My development is to try to bring this show back on the rails. Look, hearing that defensively, even though we didn't change the roster that much, but it was a change in scheme is yielding pretty radically different results. Oh, that's in terms of on the field. That's the big one for me. And the second, Zach Borchardt. Look, Luke Schleusner referred to him as a wide receiver. Now, we know he's a slash, but that the current focus of his development has been at wide receiver, specifically slot, with the goal of getting Borchardt into space where he can make people miss. Another comment from unofficial Tubbs correspondent Jordan Kay, noted observer of bad football while covering Idaho State, told me he was pretty shocked at how good Zach Borscht looked at receiver, having only been in the room for not even 2 full weeks. So, and Jordan Kay covers Boise State now, guys. It's not like he's a homer, but if you're going to get a take from someone who is not concerned about the feelings of Idaho football, it's Jordan Kay. And he said he thinks people should be stoked. Now, he also thinks people manage expectations, but Borscht is looking good. We know that in the spring game, the point of that wasn't to show off the entire playbook. A lot of that was to give people a final look. That's why we saw, look, spoiler alert, guys, we had like 6 people enter the transfer portal or so after the spring game. But hearing that Borscht is in the right position, he's playing all over the place, and he's looking immediately good. It just seems completely like all the potential we want to see out of some of the evolutions of the team. Idaho's at least not going to stop it.
I have no further follow-up on that, Brian. I've got nothing else. Tubbs late night here, and realistically, we're only an hour later than normal. But I got nothing. After getting berated for bringing up PP again, I have no other comments that would be anything positive here.
Which again, if you're touchy about being berated, it's because you've wanted to bring him up again and again and again. It means you like the PTSD. You like that feeling. We're just going to stop talking. Look, everyone, we're all stoked about football. We're going to get to Tubbs the Club formal announcements, but Marten, maybe you can bring the show back on the rails. Probably not. But Marten, we're going to shift over. You've got women's basketball news.
I just got a quick something to bring up. Unlike the other team that resides in ICCU Arena, they have actually done some business in the recruiting period during this time that ends in about 2.5 weeks.
Does they mean the women's team?
Yeah, the women's team has actually has actually signed some players, unlike the other team. And joining Jaden B, Rosa Smith, and Sarah Brands this year from the early signing period, they also signed Jenna Kilty, a guard from Portland State. I believe it's. I'm not even going to go into years. I don't want to get that stuff wrong.
Hold up, we got a top 5 transfer.
Yes. Then they got pulling a John Newley. We got a forward, Brooke Malone from Perth, Australia, transferred from Idaho State, and then also they signed
grass is greener in Moscow.
Yeah, and also signed a guard named Asha Phillips from North Nora, Australia. I'm sorry if anybody wants to correct me on that. They can later at a later time. But yeah, they actually signed three people this year.
That is your women's basketball update. We are going to choose to wait until the men's team has signed players, more players, because we've already talked about the ones they've signed so far. Marten, thanks for that quick update. We have some quick Tubbs announcements, and then we're probably going to call it a night asterisk, before we get to the announcements. We have this ritual, guys, of switching from one subject to another and then yanking it back to the other. So I am now expecting Marten to come up with a football-related issue for us to talk about. Tubbs announcement, guys. We are going to we're officially entering our summer-ish season. Tubbs is going to be taking 4 weeks off of broadcasting, and then we're going to reassess what our broadcast schedule is. We know that fall football workouts start on June 2nd, and fall camp starts August 4th. We're not going to take 100% break between now and August 4th, but we're certainly giving ourselves a few weeks off. We have one with how the show changed, meaning went down to fewer people. The workload changed. We've also been doing more reporting type of work, which takes a lot more off the screen work, as you might or might not know, meaning we're all goddamn burnt out. So we're taking 4 weeks off. After that, we'll come up with some sort of schedule, but we certainly will be back on between now and August 4th. And once August 4th rolls around, we're probably pretty close to weekly. But between now and then, quick break. If you're a patron, you should be receiving some. If you gave us your address as a patron, you should be receiving your Martin's holding it up. First merch we sent out. Got help from Nick Davis. Those are wood tubs magnets. Nick Davis put them together himself. If you don't have them in the mail and you gave us your address, you'll get it soon. If you're a patron and you didn't give us your address, in the Discord, give us your address, and then we'll mail it out to you. Otherwise, we got a couple Tubs projects, but we need some time off. So we're going to be taking some time off. Dallas, do you want to comment on any of that? Are you good with saying, no, we're just leaving?
I just want to remind everybody, patreon.com/Tubs at the Club. We are planning some specific events and things, trying to figure out a way to thank our patrons for the last year or so of Tubs content. If you say this is us closing the book on 2021 to 2022 season, we're setting up some ways to thank some folks. So if you're interested in being a part of any fun things we might be doing in the future, I just got to plug it one more time. #OnlyTubs, patreon.com/Tubs at the Club.
Yeah, in the not too distant future, we'll be scheduling our first patron call to get feedback from patrons. If that interests you, sign up. Otherwise, we'll make sure announcements come out once we have our recording schedule established. But Vandal football is taking a break. Tubs at the Club's going to take a break too. With that, I think we're ready to throw it to the Renegade behind the scenes to close us out with whatever damn song he chooses. Martin, take it away before he can shut me up.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
So raise your glass and have a drink with me. Here's to the Vandals in the crowd, all just out there living the dream, part of one and only Moscow drinking team.